Hello. Okay, I'm gonna turn you up a little bit here. All right, and then chill you down a little bit here, so you don't sound like you're screaming to me. And turn this down a little bit. Sure, the music doesn't overpower anything. Should be fine. Should be fine. Okay. So we have with us today what looks like a newish character on a newish account.
Yes, that is right.
Both correct?
Yep.
Okay. So you started playing recently?
I started playing around a month or so ago.
Okay. And you've shopped around a bit, tried a few classes, or?
Yeah.
And you settled on what looks like
Cadena.
a Kadena. Okay. And you tried, what was it again? Adele before?
Yeah, I got my Adele to 211, and I just figured I didn't really like how she played that much, so I just kept looking around. And I think Cadena is pretty fun.
Okay. A little bit more involved, I guess, than Adele.
Yeah.
Adele being a bit more, shall we say, simple?
Yeah.
And Kadena a bit more complicated? Okay. All right. So you're looking a little bit more for the complicated classes in general, and then this one caught your eye. Okay. We recently talked to a Kadena, didn't we? Was it yesterday? Day before? They were a little bit further in though. 230, 238 or something. 237.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you learn anything from that one?
A little bit. Not that much since they're like such a high level, but I learned some things, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we didn't go super in depth about Kadena itself. A little bit about like the link skills and the hyperstats, I guess, but
yeah,
that's that can be a pretty standard conversation already. So, I guess since you're pretty new to the game, we might have to fresh up on some things, some mechanics in the game, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Before we do that, what level are you at now?
My Cadena just reached 200 yesterday.
Okay, congrats. So you liking the fifth job?
Yeah, her fifth job skills are really strong. It seems to me.
Yep, I agree. Maelstrom is a very you figured out the activation for the Maelstrom and everything with like the attack, down attack.
Yeah.
That's pretty useful. You don't need to put in an extra key, so that saves your keyboard a little bit because.
I'm pressing a lot of buttons already.
I assume that's already a wasteland of of skills. So anything you can spare there is probably a good one. Because you got, what is it? You got like a shotgun, a bomb, a shuriken, daggers, scimitar, and a few more that I forgot. Yeah, it's a lot of skill rotating. But as long, I mean, if that's what works for you, then all the more power to you. Just spam away. Okay, 200, and like what kind of, like how much you're playing these days? Like what kind of progression you think you can make?
I've been playing a lot recently. I think that what I need to improve a lot on is figuring out what characters I need to like build on my Legion, and like again some links that would be good for early on with my Cadena.
Okay, and then specifically for Kadena, or like specifically for your whole account as well?
I think it would help with my whole account too, because since I'm like having some trouble picking link skills that I could put on my newer characters that I'm leveling up.
Okay. Okay, we'll circle back to that. And are you playing with like one computer or two? Have you given any thought?
I'm using one, but I do have another computer if I was to start on another one.
Have you given any thought on how you're going to? Because like progressing in the game in the beginning is pretty like straightforward, just on your character. After a while, things get very expensive, and especially on Reboot, like the amount of resources you have available to you will greatly determine to which extent you can progress, because you can't really bank on getting lucky and getting your upgrades for cheap. Like on average, you're going to have some successes, but you're also going to have some fails. So in order to kind of mitigate that, you're going to need a bank of resources. If you give it any thought, if you want to do like main computer with side computer, or farming character, or just full on your main computer and only play during the totems.
Well, I haven't given that much thought. Like originally, I was going to make a farmer Kana, but apparently, like she got hard nerfed, so that's not that easy anymore. But that could be a possibility, or I could just stick with making another farmer on this computer and transferring stuff over. I'm not 100% sure yet.
Yeah, so part of what would determine it is like how much you plan on playing, right? If you because are you using the wild totems to train and everything?
Yeah.
Because you have limited access to those wild totems, right?
Mm.
And if you had basically that's why a Kana farmer on your main account is a good idea, because if you're playing more than that, well then you can rely on Kishin. It's a little harder, yeah, to rely on the Kishin now, but it's still pretty viable. And if you know how to play like around the downtime for Kishin, you probably won't get to like 100% uptime of Kishin, but you can get pretty close, like 80-85%. So it'll still be way better rates than if you were on a main character that's already probably lesser in mobbing and doesn't have access to the totems at all. It would still be a better idea there. To counteract that, what you could do is get the Kana on the second computer, so you have access to Kishin. Again, it's going to be 50%, so you only want to rely on that once you run out of totems. Um, there's like the weird thing where you could also AFK your other computer to also get reward points, to also get totems there, so you can like double totem yourself.
Oh, I
That's
never thought about doing that.
Yeah, that could be a thing, especially with relay events, right? Because it's literally just AFK your character. Well, you'll have to do
Mm.
like the Lotus prequest one time, but then you just AFK your character and then earn totems that way. And the other way would be to use Kishin, make sure your character doesn't do too much damage, and then find some kind of way to have the character be attacking and triggering the Night Ghost Guide skill, which is what makes the Kishin last longer. So that is a skill that can trigger as long as the monster, as long as the character doesn't kill a monster. So if you use, for example, Kana has one skill. Have you played Kana before?
Yeah, I got my Kana to 200
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
so you know the shell, right? The hyper skill. If you just
Mm-hmm.
AFK them somewhere, like the hyper skill, the shell hitting things with its circle of suppression, that can trigger the Night Ghost Guide. And what some people do is like put a keyboard on the ground and put their foot on the spacebar and have the Shikigami haunting, so they're like constantly hitting people but being very weak. They have like a lot of, they have their symbols on their arcane power so they don't die, but they have very little gear, just like a weapon with very little attack, so that they have a lot of instances of damage. So also a lot of instances of being able to trigger the Night Ghost Guide, basically. And then, yeah, some maps lend themselves better than others. If there's like a safe spot in the corner where you kind of can just stand and do that, that works very well. Other maps, if your character is like rotating past that for, to get all the spawn done, then that doesn't work as well, because then you're kind of like casting your Kana and then
Yeah.
in turn hurting your spawn. It would still be 50% uptime on Kishin, so it'd still be better than nothing. But it does make it kind of irregular, right? It's like a minute of good spawn, a minute of bad, a minute of good. It feels a little awkward, But it would depend on if you're like overtaking the totems. But you could have it in general just to try to get reward points. So you could double totem it. That could already double your access. That could be a thing. Just to give you the options. I'm not telling you what you should do here, but like whatever you think makes sense for your situation.
All right. Yeah. I think I could use another computer, since that would help a lot.
Yeah, it's helped
That
me a
seems like
lot.
an easy option for me to do.
Yeah, you could always try it, and if you're like, well, this isn't like really working, it doesn't feel right, then you can still try to invest in a Kana farmer, right? If you do feel like you're kind of hitting a wall where you need to just make so much money to make any kind of improvement, and you really want to make that improvement, really want to reach that next stage, then you can still make the choice like, okay, I'm going to go for a Kana farmer on my main account. That always stays an option, of course. But yeah, I think in your current situation, it's probably better to try the other thing first and see if that is good enough for you, and then that saves you a whole lot of investing in the Kana farmer.
Yeah, I'll definitely try that.
Yep. Okay. And what is your goal with the Cadena right now? Do you have anything specifically in mind that you want to reach?
I want to reach 225, since I only got to 210 on my Adele. I want to reach that goal with my Cadena.
You want to get to Arcana?
And I want to be able to like solo some of the kind of harder bosses,
Mm-hmm.
like Rudibus or like any of the ones that actually give me gear improvement.
Yeah. Okay. And the ones that the crystals actually start valuing something.
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking 225, I'm thinking solo Chaos Rudibus, solo maybe Hard Magnus, solo Chaos Papulatus, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and it's possible to be able to solo Lotus and Damien, maybe like duo them,
Yeah, because
depending
I
on
have I
how.
have a I have a friend that has been playing for a while, and he
Mm-hmm.
could help me out a little bit with that.
Mm-hmm. Should definitely get to the point to doing it. Like on my Cannoneer, I've been able to solo Lotus and Damien as well at level 220, without being like super decked out on that character. But I do have big link skills, big legion, and access to nearly maxed out guild skills, which really help a lot. That's one thing that's a huge boost now, because one thing that we'll be looking at as well is you try to work on getting your 100% crit rate. And one of the guild skills gives you up to 30% critical damage for half an hour with an hour cooldown, so that's a huge boost to your damage. It's actually crazy that they left that in. I thought they were going to nerf that hardcore between the Tespia server, but they were like, nope, it's fine, so okay. So having access to that through a guild would also be an insane benefit. I don't know if you're in a big guild right now or you're planning to join.
Yeah, I wanted to try getting into one of the bigger ones once I reach like 210, since that seems like when a lot of the bigger guilds would accept. Or
Yeah, I don't know what their recruitment procedures are specifically. I have like my guild has like a 2 guild system where we kind of join the mule guild, where people have their secondaries or their kanas, or people who want to, who are trying to be promoted into the big guild, and then you basically just sit in there and try to form struggle CRA parties. And once you're like struggle CRA ready, or you're like close to soloing 3-door maybe, like around that point, we move you over to the main guild. Or if you're like in there for at least like a week or two, just to see, like, because some people are like, oh, I want to join the guild, and the next day they already left again. It's like it's like a lot of back and forth, so we're having like a little bit of a filter, like a pre-filter, so we have some kind of selection process there. But then from there, we pretty much allow anyone. We don't have any like harsh restrictions. We do guild PQ once a week, that kind of stuff. But yeah, every guild has their own rule set and regulations. So whatever we have, yeah, we don't do all that much. I try to do few flag races. We do guild PQs. Guild PQ once a week. But we have, I think the last 2 weeks we've gotten 38 skill points, so that's enough to max out 2 skills. So I feel like it's not too hard to get like 2 skills maxed out, but anything beyond that gets very difficult. Like even maxing out 3 skills, you have to do so much more than just maxing out 2. You have to be like one of the top 10 guilds probably, maybe like top 20 to be able to max out 3 skills, and then maybe the top 5 skills can get like close to maxing out the 4th one. Yeah, it's pretty steep, pretty steep requirement there.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, do your research and see what guild has what you want it to have. Of course, yes. Certain skills are more competitive. Other ones are just more hanging outy. Other ones just do carries. Other ones do everything struggle. Like, yeah, find out what fits for you.
Wait, could you repeat that for a second? I was.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Which
I'm sorry.
Which I was just
like last 10 seconds if you.
Yeah, just in general, like different guilds have different requirements and just do things differently, right? Certain like some guilds just allow pretty much anything, besides the obvious, of course. And others have very, very strict rules, like we do this. You need this much contribution every week or you're out. Like, you just got to shop around a little bit, see what the requirements are. But yeah, probably having a little bit higher level and a little bit more range and a little bit more experience from some bosses under your belt will put you in a better position to have more options.
Okay. So it's just that I have to look into, like, specifically into certain guilds to see what.
Yeah, I think they have a greeting message now. In the guild search, so you can already kind of make a selection there if you think that, or you can always check if people are online, if there are any juniors online or something, and you can probably just send them a message and be like, hey, are you guys recruiting right now? Like, do you have any specific things that I can do to, make my application a little bit better, something like that. Guilds are always, looking for fresh meat, so. And if you reach out, that's always a good, it's always a good sign if somebody's like willing to go the extra mile and willing to put in the time to, to join. Okay. Yep. Wait, is there something you want to say?
No, not really.
Okay.
Just thinking about it.
Yep. Okay, is there anything that you've already seen where you're like, I don't know how any of this works, I need some help with this, besides like the Legion stuff and finding priorities there? And the links?
I need to think about that a little bit more.
Well, it's maybe good that you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know a lot of things about the game since I'm like a newer player. I've been trying to like look at some things, and I really only look up things that I specifically am having trouble with. So
sure, okay. You kind of like try to make it your own way, and if you're like, oh shit, I feel like stuck here, or then you look around. I see you have 2 unique items. Are those from the potential from the scrolls?
Yeah, they're from the compensation.
The compensation, okay. Do you still have the reboot box? You use that on your Adele or your Kana or something?
Yeah, I used the reboot box like early on. I probably shouldn't have done that, but
well, ideally no, but I'm just checking. It's not like the end of the world, but if you still have it, then that does give you access to some resources now. Yeah. Okay, I'm just scrolling through the equips real quick to kind of see get like a general idea of what you got going on. Intermitching. Right. So we can kind of go. We can go through this one at a time. Have you looked at any of the commands in my channel so far?
Yeah, I occasionally went and I looked at the I looked at the links a little bit, and I looked at the character selection thing. With the
the classes with all the numbers. That was so much work. Okay, so for links, so you have looked at this. So I mean, let's start there because you already mentioned this. You have any questions about the command itself, or does this all make sense?
Really. Like, I could understand the chart and everything. It's just kind of hard to figure out what to prioritize.
Sure. Yeah, so with the colors on the bottom, I kind of try to indicate what things I think are important and which things aren't very important. And it's like the general order, like left to right. The experience ones are kind of like your solid base trifecta of helping everything level. So even if you're not leveling that quickly on your on main anymore, having those 3 settled early on will just help you grow your entire legion all the much faster. The 3 of them combined just means more passive experience, more extra experience when you use runes, and more runes from combos. And then certain classes, of course, get way more combos than others, right? Classes that kill all the monsters at once get multi-kill bonus, and characters that kill all the monsters one at a time get faster combos as a result, and get the combo orbs to kind of compensate for that. You've probably seen this with Adele, right? Because you have the swords flying around, you build combos much faster, right? Because the swords kill everything individually. And as you can see with the Aaron EXP orbs, like if you get them to level 210, you get plus 900% on those orbs, which basically means at early levels that one of those orbs is like a full level, basically. It's just an insane chunk of experience. It still ends up being a decent amount in the very high level maps because it scales, right? The experience from an orb scales with how much experience you get from monsters in the map. So if you're ever training, these 3 just always are very important. As with most skills, though, it's more important to just get like the level 2 version at level 120, and then kind of work on everything rather than pushing for 210 immediately, because like the comparatively how hard it is to get from 120 to 210 compared to how hard it is to get, in the same amount of time you can get like 6, 7, 8 characters from 0 to 120, right? Yeah. So in the beginning, when you just still have a lot of room to grow and there's still a lot of legion to build and a lot of link skills to unlock, it makes more sense just to go for lower levels on many characters, and then slowly like build them all up. And there might be a character or 2 in there that you actually enjoy and you just play those a little bit more, and that's fine. But all in all, I think it's very important to find a healthy balance between working on your main and working on your legion and your links. I think it's a good thing to always do a little bit of both every day. So generally what I do is I just go by the order of the grid, basically. Just start on the top one and then just work my way down slowly. Just the general order in the first column. There's a few that you might be able to skip a little bit, but so yeah, if the other thing you said you looked at the other grid, right? The classes grid.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the cross-reference of which ones are super important here and which ones score very poorly there, specifically in like mobbing and in leveling speed early on, is typically what I would advise is the high, the candidates basically for mega burning, right, and terra burning.
Mm-hmm.
Because those generally are not a great game experience for most people. You could be the exception. You could really like it. That's possible. But in general, mega burning those will help you get through those hard levels a little bit faster. And as you're building your legion, you will notice that every single character gets quite a bit stronger. You're kind of approaching that point, I guess. Once you get to 3K and you get another extra hex in the grid, and you get an extra 5 characters that you can put in. So you're going to go up to 13 characters, right, at 2.5. And then you go up to 18 at 3, which is, almost plus 50% basically. That's when your legion starts kind of kicking in and starts making every new character that you make quite a lot stronger. So which ones have you made so far?
I've made the Evan, Aron, and Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
I have Beast Tamer, Pathfinder, Luminous, Wind Archer, Dawn Warrior, Ho Young, Phantom, and Demon Avenger. And I was starting to level a Demon Slayer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the Cadena and Adele and Kana.
Cadena, yeah. And Kana, yeah, those 3. So Phantom is probably a very good one for you to level. I don't know if you still have the Mega Burn coupon.
I don't anymore, because I used that on my Beast Tamer because I was looking into it, and a lot of people said that you should use it on Beast Tamer.
Okay.
I don't know if that was the best decision or not. But.
Well, it's too late now. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
But Phantom is very good. It's like an easy 15% crit rate. And typically new characters start off with pretty bad crit rate. Some of them get crit rate skills in like 2nd, 3rd, 4th job. But if you can immediately give them that extra 15% crit rate as like immediately when you make them, that's what really gives you the basis for the critical damage to kick in, right? Because if your critical rate isn't 100%, then your critical damage isn't always applying. And critical damage is actually really big for increasing your damage. So giving you access to that critical damage through increasing your critical rate is very important early on. So I would say the Phantom, like as far as links go, is probably one of the more important ones to work on right now. And then by extension, the other things that give you critical rates, so like the Marksman, the Night Lord, just for being in your Legion, activated in your Legion, they will give you critical rate. And then the Marksman also has access to a link skill that will stack with the Pathfinder and then also with the Bowmaster once you make that one, for even more critical rate. And then you also already have the Beast Tamer. So then that will give you like all of the sources of critical rate, and basically dumping all of the crit rate onto a character and all of the, the experience links onto one character will already make the character's leveling so much faster when you make a new one. So in general, how I make characters for Legion and everything is I tend to so just follow like storyline quests and like the leveling guide for level 1 to 100, and then I usually just stop at 100, and then I just do Zakum and Monster Park, and then that's it, and I just move on to the next character or I move on to my main, and I don't really train it past 100 at all. Just Zakum, Monster Park every day, and then I log off of it again. The reason is because just it's the most efficiency you can get out of your time on that character, basically. And Zakum is just very easy. Just leave it at the door, just kill it and go out, and then you just, next day you just log back into it and it's still there. It'll give you a bunch of access. Hopefully, it also builds up the Sakum Iron Face, maybe a bunch of hats that you can fuse together for charm, and maybe you've already seen the charm mechanic, right? Because you want to get level 30 charm for the pocket item.
Yeah, that's what I used my trait boost potion for. I'm not sure if that was a bad idea or not. I mean, I keep doing these things and like already having them done, so it doesn't matter afterwards. But
so in general, it's not like in the grand scheme of things, it's not like a really bad thing or anything. It's just in general, all your stats kind of like grow as you go, and once if you're sure you're going to go far with your character, there are other traits like insight and empathy that are very good and way more difficult to level, at least to 100. And charm past level 30 kind of loses all of its value, and getting up to 30 is pretty simple. It just takes a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of patience. So typically I would promote using trait boost potions for insight and empathy instead, but only if you're sure that you're going to go far with the character. If you're just like, oh, new character, and I'm just like trying to get my set together, then yeah, you can use it on charm, of course, unlock the item, the pocket slot. In general, though, the early pocket slots, pocket items that you can get are fairly weak, and even the set bonuses aren't like amazing, so it's not even that necessary to rush it. But one thing I've noticed that a lot of new players kind of get antsy that a lot of the slots in their inventory aren't filled yet. They're like, I don't even have a pendant, I don't have a belt, I'm still missing 3 rings. But the thing is that all of the things that really give you a lot of damage are already there. That's your emblem, your secondary, and your weapon. Like that's basically where 70 to 80% of all your damage is already going to come from. So the fact that you're missing all those other item slots isn't that big of a deal. Once those 3 are like set in place, then you can start working on like filling in the gaps. But it's probably way more important to just focus on those 3, because just getting 1 extra line of attack or something on a weapon can be the same kind of damage increase as getting 4 other items and getting them all 3% luck, for example, even including the set bonus, just because of how stat and attack compare to each other in like damage calculation, basically. But yeah, like with this method, you'll just grow an army of level 140s, which is the sweet spot where you want to be, because it's just past the level 2 for the Link skill, and it's the rank. Is it rank S? Yeah, rank S for Legion. So that's when you start picking up 3 spots. And then when you can put them in the Legion, that's when they actually start mattering.
Alright, so I also...
yeah?
I was kind of confused about fusion and accessory crafting and things of that matter.
So... we can learn all the professions, right? So fusion is when you have 2 items that are exactly the same item. You can put them in, and then depending on the level, you might have to have a higher level of alchemy to be able to fuse them. So the sweet spot is like level 6 alchemy. Then you can fuse items of every level and extract items of every level. Extracting is pretty good because that gives you resources for later. And also Philosopher's Stones that you can NPC for 300k each, which is typically worth more and just gives you more value than NPCing the actual items like pencilier stuff. So that might be something worth looking into and leveling up your alchemy to level 6. And also if you want to fuse higher level items later. So for fusing, what happens is there's like a very, very small chance that something happens with your potential, but that's not really why people fuse. Why people fuse is because when you... fuse 2 of the same items together, you re-roll the flame stats on it. And if both of the items already have a pretty crappy flame and there's not really any loss in there anyway, you can kind of like, just gamble and see if you get something better for it. So especially in the beginning when flames are pretty expensive, right? They're pretty rare. You don't really do that many bosses. They're 10 mil each, which is pretty expensive. But you have an extra spare flame. I mean, you can just pay the 3 or 4 whatever alchemist stones, and boom, you basically get a flame re-roll for free. So that's why people do that. Mainly they do that on like pink holy cups, for example, because those have flame advantage. We'll probably get back into that if that's. But basically, items that have flame advantage, right, which means that they just typically get better quality flames. You very rarely, probably ever, see people do this for non-flame advantage items because the outcomes are just going to be horrible. Even if you get a really good hit, it's very low impact for your account. So, but yeah, oh yeah, I did mention fusing before, right? Like with the Zakum helmets or the Horntail pennants.
Charm.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can charm. So you wear the items once, then you fuse them together, and then because you make a new version of the item, you can just wear it again for the charm boost again. And you just hold on to it, and then the next time you get 2 hats, you just wear both of them, fuse them, wear them, fuse again with the last one you kept. So basically every time you wear 2 hats, you get 4 times the result if you had 1 left, right? It's always like times 2 minus 1 with the amount of items that you have.
Thinking of any other specific questions I have.
So that's how, it's how fusion and alchemy are linked. So yeah, to level your alchemy to level 6, the easiest way is to just, that's part of like the beginner tips, is to always harvest the big flowers and the big veins you see, right? Because they give a lot of resources. The golden flowers are going to be the most important because they drop the straight up the oils and not even like the seeds, so or the flowers, like they're already pre-made. And basically just with oils and with whatever potion bottles that you can buy from the NPC in Arden Mill, just trying to make any kind of potions with alchemy. And even if you fail, you get a bunch of experience and then just level up your alchemy that way to level 6. Shouldn't take super long.
And where would, like, is there a specific place where golden flowers would spawn more, or is it just random?
Yeah, so all of the big flowers and the big veins, basically, well, everything, but mainly also where the flowers and the veins are, they spawn where a lot of people go. Like, just people's presence is what makes them spawn. So if you go to places where people are leveling, like popular training maps, but people haven't really learned harvesting or mining yet, then they're just sitting there for free waiting for you to harvest them. So typically every single leveling map up to level 100 where people train a lot, just surfing through those channels, you'll probably find a decent amount already. And when you're higher level, just channels where people just train because they're on coupons and, and they kind of just underestimate the value of these things, just going there. You can find a lot of them there. And the third thing is like maps that are just before boss fights, for example, where a lot of people pass through to get to the boss fight. Those maps tend to have a lot of them as well, like the Deadmine 3 map, right where Remaru is. A lot of people pass by there. There's always like 1 or 2 floating around there. And just being in the map and harvesting them and killing a few other monsters, sometimes even just you being there spawns another one. So if you're really trying to mine those, that'll be a good spot. Of course, now that I mentioned it, everyone's going to go there, and that's going to be a bad spot. But well, that's why I'm giving you the generalities, right? Like what you generally want to be looking for, and then you can use that in the future.
Right, it's just popular areas.
Yeah, mainly popular areas, and specifically ones where people haven't learned the professions yet, or they're just too busy to harvest. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else with like crafting and that kind of stuff, like professions? Does it all make sense?
Yeah. Is it like worth it to craft rings and pendants and such?
Just to fill up slots or to level up your accessory crafting?
Yeah. So like is it worth keeping them in any of my slots, like the things that I would craft with?
No. Not like for now, like way later. You'll make like Meister rings, but that's like way down the road.
Okay.
Those are like level 140 rings. Once you get to like level 12, so to speak, accessory crafting, you go to like level 10 and then you push beyond that. And then you'll make Meister equips, but that's way down the road. That's probably like when you're in your 240s or something that you start thinking about that. 235, 240s, like around there. Once all your gears like past 17 stars and 2.5 lines of legendary potential, like that's when you push into that realm. No, until then it's just like you craft it and then you extract it again to get some of the resources back, and then you move on basically. But you wouldn't do that for accessory crafting just yet, only when you want to be pushing for the higher quality and because you want to start making those rings, for example. I mean, you could if you really want to, but like in general, it's not really worth. Okay. Oh, one thing I didn't mention yet with link skills, but I see you have a level 4 Cygnus Blessing. Like some of them stack with each other, right? Mm-hmm. But I see you've figured that out already, so that's fine. Oh yeah, so currently you have 12 link skills on, and it's kind of like a combination of both mobbing and bossing together, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
the
s-
noble fire and the adventurous curiosity, that stuff.
yeah, like Rune and like the Evan, the Mercedes, the Aaron. Those are very specifically mobbing ones, and then Light Wash and Terms and Conditions are very specifically bossing ones. So as you just access more characters and you level them up. Oh wait, you do have a Phantom. Oh, I must have missed that one. Um, but as you level these up, you'll just have access to more and more link skills, and then you'll be able to min-max way better on like which links do I want to have on, which ones do I not want to have on, and because you can switch twice a day now, it'll give you a little bit more flexibility. One thing I like to do is if I know I haven't switched my link skills twice yet on a day, I will already pre-switch them to another character before I go to sleep, and then or right before reset, and then I wake up. Then I can just do it on that character, do whatever I want on that character that day, and then move them, and then it'll be like the first move for the day. That way you kind of get like a free extra reset if you didn't use the one from yesterday. I'll give you a little bit more flexibility.
Okay.
Little tip. Okay. All right. We could. Yes. Okay. So looking at your stat, what is your understanding about unique or your inner abilities right now?
Um, I kept my ability at unique since it seems like it would take a lot of honor XP to get to legendary ability. Not sure about how much on average it would take. Uh,
Yeah, that's the whole
and
thing. It's really tricky to say because it can rank down.
yeah, and I was looking at some of the specific things that it would be good for Cadena, like skill cooldown
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that.
So inner ability is kind of a weird thing. It's both very impactful and also pretty. Typically doesn't come into play until pretty late as well. So what I mean by that is that classes that need, for example, attack speed +1, they kind of want to rush it to legendary and get that attack speed +1 as early as they can, so you can just max your attack speed, right? You can kill everything faster, you can move out of the way from bosses faster, increases your survivability, mobility, just the flow through the map, and you want to get used to that flow of how fast your character attacks and what your rhythm of your attacks is and everything. You want to get used to that as soon as possible. If you don't need that, a lot of characters, while you're still leveling, can make use of having a line of meso-obtain or a line of drop rate so that you can just get more nodes when you're training or make more money when you're killing stuff when you're just working yourself up in the process. For Kadena, I see here, because I have a command for like everything, including one for inner abilities. So we've got three things. One is like how do you approach leveling up your inner ability. The other one is like a full list of just all the possible outcomes and all the possible tiers. And then the third one is like what is the best in slot one for your character that you want to aim for, in the current meta, basically. So for Kadena, it says for top line, you would want 20% cooldown skip, and then 21 attack or 10 boss or 38 buff duration as your second and your third line. So the way that inner ability usually works is that when the top line is unique, or when the rank is unique, the top line will be 100% like a unique line, and then the other two will be either rare or epic, with like most commonly rare, but like a chance of being epic. And then when you go up to legendary, your top line will be 100% legendary, and then the other two lines will be epic with a chance of being unique. So basically what we bank on when we're rolling our inner ability is that we're trying to get unique lines on the second or third line. We're trying to get that first, and then after that we try to roll the top line because there's the most variance in the second and third line. So we want to be able to lock those in first because that eliminates a bunch of does that make sense? Because if you lock in the top line first, then you're just probably going to be left with shit on your second and third line, and then you lose a lot of potential on your inner ability. So that's why the how-to, which is a little bit of a crude drawing for me from a long time ago, but that's why this talks about how you would go about it. So, like you said, you don't know how much it's going to take to get to legendary because it's random and all of that. So typically what you do is you get it to unique right where you are now, and then you use circulators. Have you seen those before?
Oh yeah, I saw circulators. I wasn't sure exactly, like
Yeah.
if they increase percentage of better abilities or
Yeah,
like
so
increase.
they're in cash up. They're pretty expensive, and we haven't had a sale on those in a while. Usually, there's a sale every now and then, but they haven't been around for a while, so might have to, just use them without the sale. But the great thing about circulators, if they have a high chance of tiering up to the higher tier, and they have no chance of tiering down. So they're like a nice way. You kind of have to spend some money, but you can brute force your way into legendary without using your honor experience. And since honor experience is a pretty limited resource, that's a really cool thing to be able to do. Because your honor experience, you basically just want to sit on that until you really want to start rolling for that top line again. So before that, there's two things you can do. One is just use a circulator, right, to get a legendary, and then keep using circulators until you hit mesobtain or drop rate on your top line, because in your case, you don't need the attack speed. And then you basically just sit on that inner ability until you save up a bunch of honor experience. I'm talking like more than 1 million, 2 million maybe even. Best way to do that is just kill a lot of bosses. If you get more drop rate, you'll get those medals to drop, right? The honor medals from monsters that you're killing. And also try to do dojo once a week. And then on Monday, you will get points based on your rank during the week. And then if you rank in the top 70%, I think it is, for your class, then you will get points, and with those points you can buy items from the dojo shop, which some of them are honor experience medals. And then other than that, there's also sometimes event shops that have event medals that you can buy out. Which I think that phase 3 of the shop is going to have one of those boxes with honor medals, I think. Yeah, so that's something to look out for. And then, once you have all that honor experience, then basically what you're going to do is you're going to use circulators again, but then to get one of those unique lines that we talked about, right? So either you probably want to prioritize 10% boss or 38% buff duration.
Yep.
And to get those on either your second or your third line of your inner ability. And then when you have that, then you typically wait until there's a 50% off inner ability reroll event. These are part of Sunny Sunday events. I think we're getting one this Sunday, so that'll be a little bit too early for you. But they tend to come around I would say like every 12 weeks or so. So like 4 or 5 times a year. And then during that, basically what you do is, when you roll your inner ability, you can lock it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the roll becomes much more expensive, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you need all that honor experience. So during that event, that's when you lock the line that you rolled for with the circulators, and you have to lock your tier as well. And then you just roll until you hit that, 20% cooldown skip? Yeah, until you hit the 20% cooldown skip on your main skill. And that would be like the long-term thing to do. You could also try to go for the 20% cooldown skip instead of the mesobtain or the drop rate, before that point. It kind of just depends on what you hit first with the circulators. Like if you use 5 circulators and you hit it, then you were like, well, I might as well keep this because it can get pretty expensive. There's a lot of variants. One thing that'll help you explain as well is the reason that we use the circulators is once you hit any line with a circulator, it gives you the best number that you can possibly get within that tier, because there's still variance within the tiers and within the types of lines. But the circulator always gives you the highest number.
Okay.
That's why we do that, because otherwise the buff duration, I don't know, it can be as low as like 29% or 28 maybe in the same tier, but the circulator will always give you that 38. That's why we use those.
Sounds good.
A lot of information, huh?
Yep.
But yeah, you can always read back on the inner ability command, and if there's ever, if you're still any specific questions back then, you can always ask in the chat. There's always people that are helpful, or message me or anything. That'll be fine. Yeah, but like that's the thing that you're not going to be, you can do like one of the temporary things, right? One of those temporary top lines for now, and then you're just going to be saving for a long time until you min max it out, basically. Okay. All right. Building the Legion. Do you want to get into that?
Yes.
So in the beginning, you just throw things into stat and attack. That makes perfect sense. And then as you gain more access to the outer grid, things get a little bit more complicated, right? The inner grid, you can just, you know about the arrows, right? You can switch some positions.
Yep.
The outer grids are fixed. So that means that how you build your pieces and where you put them starts getting a lot more important. For now, you could just leave it where it is. But I would say once you get to 3K and you can get the extra hex, then it's going to be important to start moving your pieces around. So in general, the most important ones for your damage are going to be critical damage on the top left, and then critical rate on the top right if you need it, of course, and then boss damage, and then a little bit later also IED under critical damage. So kind of in that order. I say kind of in that order because remember, critical damage is nice, but it's only nice if you hit the 100% crit rate, right? Otherwise, you get reduced efficiency on the crit damage. What that also means is that things like stat and attack basically become filler spaces for a while. It's like, oh, I have extra pieces lying around. You can put them in lock and attack. Otherwise, it all goes into the other stuff instead. It's way more impactful for your overall damage. Of course, it's not going to appear in your range, right? Critical rate, boss damage, critical damage, IED, all don't show up in your range. So it might seem that your range goes down, but your actual damage output is going to go up. And that's a pattern that you'll see more and more, is that you won't really be able to rely on your range for anything. Someone else asks you, like, what's your range? It's like, well, I mean, you can tell them, but it doesn't really help them. If you ask someone else what their range is, like, it's not going to tell you anything. There's just too many things that are going to start coming into play that are not visible there. So once you get to 3K, what you want to build is like a straight line, basically, from critical damage to critical rate that goes through the middle. And then you put like a luck on one side, attack on the other side, so that the pieces that it goes through the most, at least, are your main stat and your attack. And then you want to fill up critical rate as much as you need to get to 100%, and then fill up critical damage basically as much as you can in there. And then the rest will be either boss damage or IED, which will kind of depend on how strong your other stuff is, and depending on how strong the boss is that you're killing. Do you know about the concept, like how IED works and how PDR works for bosses?
I don't really know that much about it, no.
So the harder the bosses get, the more PDR they have, which stands for physical damage reduction. It's basically just armor. And then IED is the stat, like ignore enemy defense is what that stands for. Is basically, it just means penetration, right? You just try to penetrate the armor, basically. Bosses will, in the beginning, they will have just like 50% armor, 60% armor, which basically means they block 60% of your damage, like a final damage debuff, basically. And then your ignore defense will just ignore the percentage that you have, ignore defense, of the armor. So let's say a boss has 50% armor, you have 50% ignore. That means you ignore 50% of the 50% armor, which means there's still 25% armor, so your damage gets reduced by 25, so you deal 75% of your damage. That's still pretty straightforward, right?
Yep.
But as the bosses get harder, their defense goes over 100%. Like Chaos Vellum, for example, is like the first big bad guy that gets 200% PDR. So that means if, let's say that you have, currently, what do you have, like 69% or something?
I have 66.
66. So let's say, that's actually a great example. So let's say he has, if you have 300, that's a great example. So he has 200% defense, you have 66 ignore, which means you ignore 66% of that damage, which means that's 2/3, so there's 1/3 left, which is 66%, right? So your damage is still reduced by 66%, so you mean you only deal 34% of your damage, so like a third. Which you can already tell, like 66 is probably not going to cut it, right? Probably need to work on that because he just cuts your damage into 3. So if you're going to be, it'll basically be like you're fighting the same boss, but just with triple the health bar. So what comes into play later is, since IED is limited in its resources and it is available on your weapon, your secondary, and your emblem that I mentioned before, it's going to be about balancing out how much IED you need, how much boss damage you want, and how much attack percentage you can get, because those are like the three big defining things that define how much damage you're going to be dealing, and they're all stuck on kind of like the same three items. So the balance between your weapon, your secondary, and your emblem, or your WSE for short, that's going to start coming into play. Like starting CRA and then beyond that is going to be one of the most important things, to have that solid foundation like set in stone, so that you can, on the side you're working on your critical rate, you're working on your critical damage, but your boss, your attack, and your IED on those three items is going to be paramount to make sure that that setup is correct. In order to, enable that setup to be optimal, you're going to be working on your Legion, your links, your hyperstats, and then your grid of your Legion itself, to make sure that you have the optimal combination of those three things. And as you can already imagine, like for every class, the balance is a little bit different, right? Some classes have a lot of IED in their kit, some classes have a lot of boss damage. So which line you want where is going to depend on that. This is also where familiars come into play, because they can have boss damage and IED on them as well. Although it seems like you're pretty new, so you probably don't have a stack of familiars lying around, right?
Nope.
It seems like for new players, they're going to play a very, very small role. So that's kind of bad that you can't take advantage of it, but it's also kind of good because it's not going to like totally mess up whatever you do. So that's kind of like a silver lining, I guess. So yeah, for now, fine. Once you get 3K, bigger Legion, extra 5 characters in. So then you basically go for the big line in the middle, connect critical rate, critical damage, fill up critical rate as much as you have to. That's the most important one. Then critical damage, much as you can. And then depending on how hard the bosses you're fighting, if you're fighting bosses with low defense, you can put them in boss damage, right? Because then more of your damage gets through. If you're fighting bosses with high defense, but you don't have a lot of IED, it's better to put in the IED. And you also... so IED, one thing I forgot to mention, so IED is multiplicative. So that means that if you have, let's say you have 60, what do you have, 66%, right?
Yep.
If you add 4% or a source of 4%, you don't go to 70. What it does is it adds the percentage line that it has to the difference between, basically to how much you still need to get to 100. So if you add a 4% line when you're at 66, you're still missing 34% to get to 100. So you're adding 4% of that 34 that you're missing. So it'll be like 1.46. Is that correct? 34 times 4, 120, 136, 1.36% actually. So you'll go to like 67 or 68 depending on the rounding in your stat window. So because of this, because all of the sources are counted individually, and you always look at the percentage of what you're missing, the bigger the chunks of IED, the better. That's why your weapon and your secondary and your emblem are so important, because once you get to legendary, you can get chunks of 40% there. Or once you get your Legion to 6K and you get the whole grid, putting a full block of ignore defense in your Legion, filling that in, that is also one block of 40%. So that's why those start counting really heavily later on in the game. And that's also why in this current state you wouldn't put anything in IED yet, right? Because you would just get a line of 6%, which is very, very little for you right now. Wouldn't really do much. But once you unlock the second line, you can make a line of 13%. That starts counting.
Okay.
Is that going to make sense? Like why the bigger sources are more important than smaller sources? And
yeah, it is. And one of the skills that the Cadena has, since it increases critical rate by 10%, but it has like a 60-minute or 60-second downtime.
Oh, it's one of your hyper skills, right? The potion or something? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Shadow Dealer's Elixir.
Yeah, basically anything that gives you critical rate but that doesn't have 100% uptime is something that you just can't count on. You want to have your critical rate just have 100% uptime to be at 100%, and that's what you want to aim for. So one thing that you can take into account, for example, is once you unlock node slots in your matrix and you get decent sharp eyes, that immediately gets 100% uptime, and you can just resummon it for 10% critical rate. That is something you take into account. But the hyper, you just, you can't use that. You could in the beginning, right? If you're, like, I'm not saying that everything has to be halted because the 100% critical rate like is the most important thing, like at the expense of everything or something, right? If you're like at 90 something percent critical rate and everything else is decently built, like you'll get to 100 eventually. But yeah, if you're like at 60 or 70% critical rate, like that basically means that it's taking away a lot of your critical damage. So you do want to focus that, but it's not like the only thing in the world, because then yeah, if you're at 90%, 92%, that does mean that during the hyper you'll get to your 100%, and that's when you'll be doing most of your burst damage. So it is, you know, disproportionately more useful, but eventually you'll just aim for 100% uptime on 100% crit. Yeah. Yeah, and you can check exclamation mark crit in the chat as well. Like I linked to all the possible sources of critical rate. It's mainly like link skills and legion and stuff that we already talked about. But there's some more niche sources. For example, like weapon souls can get critical rate, for example, later on in the game. You don't usually want to rely on that, but if you get that, that could be a workaround. I think there's also critical rate on familiars, maybe, right? The familiar codex itself from the badges buff can also get a little bit of critical rate there, and your hyper stats is a huge source, of course. I'll probably get into your hyper stats in a little bit because that's. Oh wait, do you have a picture of your hyper stats?
I think I might have accidentally cut it out of the thing. I can send it right now if you need to see it.
Well, I see you had 100% critical rate in your picture. And this
that
is
was with the buff.
That's with the hyper? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing is that in general, it's like fine in the beginning to rely on things that give you critical rate, right, in your link skills to get to 100, but there's also link skills that just give you a lot of damage. So if you can choose between the archer skill right now that gives you 2% critical or 3%, you know, something like that critical rate, or something that gives you like 10 or 12% damage, then eventually you're like, oh, okay, I want to get a little bit of critical rate from something else, so I can switch out the link skill. Or the Phantom Instinct that gives you 15%, which is really good. But if you don't, you know, if you can get your 15% somewhere else, then you can switch it out for a link skill that gives you a lot of damage instead. That's why some people, for example, go for a critical rate in the inner ability, because it completely puts the Phantom Instinct offside, and then they can just basically replace the link skill with another skill that gives more damage than what they could have gotten from a line in their inner ability instead. So you're kind of puzzling, like where does the thing I need have the lowest value that's somewhere, so that somewhere else I can capitalize on that, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, the puzzle will, in the beginning there's like too many pieces and too many gaps probably in the puzzle. But as you start leveling and you get more of the pieces, it'll start making more sense. And you'll have more points to really play with these systems, right? In the beginning, your hyper stats is more like, oh, you just put everything at level 7 or something, and then you kind of just wait there. But as you get way more points, you're like, okay, you can get one to level 13, one to level, you know, it can get crazy. But yeah, you typically don't get anything past level 10 until probably until level 250 or something, because it's just way too expensive. Oh, did you send it to me?
Oh, I can still send it to you. Hold on.
Yeah, so crit. Yeah, just making sure of some things, because it's kind of understandable, but some people put a lot of points into like their main stat and their attack a little bit early on. But those don't have great efficiency. Again, it's kind of the same logic from your Legion, where even though it makes your range go up, and it's like that's my stat, that's my attack. The other ones are just so much more efficient, you know, like the critical rate, critical damage, ignore defense, boss damage, those ones. And specifically once you start doing harder bosses. In the beginning, you could just pump damage, pump range, right? And it's just more range means more damage and you're fine. But once the PDR, you know, the armor for the bosses starts kicking in, all of that is kind of out the window, and you have to start calculating. And it's no longer the cute, innocent mushroom game, but it's basically like calculator story at that point.
Can't wait for that.
The game, yeah, the game really like shifts to a different gear at that point. Let's see, you have a. 5, 3 in crit rate. Okay, so you're getting to 100 with 3 in crit rate. So that's good, right? So now you also know that if you level more, you get more hyperstat points because you get those for free when you level, and you can get enough critical rate out of your hyperstats. Then you can move out of the link skills instead, and get more damage in there. And then you're basically trading. You're basically trading nothing away, but you're just gaining only at that point. So the ID is already at 5. So because you're going to be adding to an existing source, which is going to become a bigger source of ID, leveling up that ID would be beneficial to adding a new source of ID in the Legion, right? So one source of 15% is better than a source of 10 and a source of 5 that are separate. That makes sense or no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So eventually, like the ID is probably also going to go to level 10, and then the boss. But the boss damage is they're just going to catch up to each other, and it's going to depend on how hard the bosses are, right? Like whether they're armored or not. Do you have any points in the hyperset? Oh yeah, you have some in arcane power as well, right? So arcane power is important once you hit those milestones to have more. You know about the arcane power requirements and maps and everything, and how that affects final damage?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying to get some arcane symbols, but since it's daily, it's kind of hard to increase the amount of arcane force I can have.
Yeah, you're kind of time gated there. You can do your dailies, and then that's it. Like you know about the 2 dailies, right? One for kills and gather, and then the other one for the Urda Spectrum.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so every area basically has 2 of those dailies, all the way up to Morass, and then Morass and Asphera have 1 for each, for each area. But that'll just be your income, and then you just level those up early on. That's huge damage because it's a bunch of stat. It's final damage, and then once you hit those final damage caps, that's when you just start killing the monsters a lot faster. So one of the main things when you're mobbing is going to be the final damage from arcane power, and of course your critical rate, critical damage. And the other thing is going to be your boost notes. So if everything with the hyperstats and with the Legion all makes sense, we'll move on to the Matrix.
All
right. So for the Matrix, there's like 2 main things, right? It's the boost notes that level up your existing skills, and then it's the skill notes which just enable completely new skills that will just open up new dimensions of how your character actually works. Some classes have a great 5th job skill and you get a lot more fun out of it, and some have not so great ones and you're kind of just screwed. And then you've realized that you've invested in the wrong character. Thankfully, you had the first experience. So that's one hurdle that we took. Have you looked into what boost nodes you need? Because I see you've saved some here. Do you know how everything works with boost nodes and everything? Because you did have the Adele leveled up, but I don't know how deep you went into the Matrix.
Yeah, I think I got one of the perfect trios for my Adele. And I leveled that up to 10. I think that's the max. Or 5. So.
Oh, wait, so it's not like in this picture? You have a level 5 one?
Oh, no, that was on my Adele.
Oh, on the Adele. Okay, yeah. So do you know which ones you're looking for on the Cadena?
I was looking for the chain arts increase, the beatdown damage, and I think the Shadow Dealer final damage increase.
Chain arts. Let's see.
Or the muscle memory chain arts one.
Yeah, I think muscle memory. Okay, wait, it says here chain arts. Oh, thrash, but that's not called thrash anymore, I think.
It is. It's thrash, muscle memory, and terrain of chains.
Oh yeah, it's not stroke anymore. And then what else is here? Brick, bat, dagger, shuriken, shotgun bombs, and scimitar claw. Like those 6 skills, and then you get the so it's 6 skills. You want to boost each one of them twice, right? So that's 12, and then 3 per skill. So that means 4 nodes that encompass all of the skills. And then once you get the 4 trios, then you'll be able to lock those in, start leveling those up, disassemble all of the other boost nodes that don't have the same top skill, right, as those 4. And then that'll give you shards that you can use to make new nodes with. Does the whole process make sense?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, it seems.
Yeah, I just don't know to which level you've already like engaged with this mechanic, so I don't want to like blow over it too quickly and you're like, what the fuck do I do? And I also don't want to like explain something that you already know exactly how it works, so I'm like trying to feel where you're at.
I didn't get really far into disassembling them, but I kind of have a basic understanding of how that stuff works.
Okay. Yeah, so in the beginning, typically, skill nodes, you kind of neglect those in the beginning. Like if you open nodes and the skill comes from it, of course you level it up. But in general, you just kind of neglect them in the beginning because the biggest value is in just unlocking the skill itself. And leveling it up typically just increases the damage on it a little bit. But for the most part, those skills are so strong that they tend to kill monsters very fast already. So boosting them is kind of a waste in the beginning. It's better to level on your work on your boost nodes to make sure that all of your skills that you have 100% uptime on are just getting to the kill potential through the final damage increase from your boost nodes, and of course again from the final damage increase from your arcane power. And those two are going to work together to just make your damage just skyrocket from where it is right now. The one exception there can be if skill nodes get bigger uptime, for example, or hit like in the past you had skills that would hit more lions or more monsters. That's really not a thing anymore. But some skills have more uptime, which that could allow you to train faster as well and boss more efficiently. I don't know if Kadena has one of those, but the best way to figure that out is just to Google your skill and just look at the description and see if the uptime or the cooldown changes at all when it levels. I don't think Cadena has it though. I think they'll have they keep the same cooldown and uptime if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you could always double check that just to make sure. But the most that would do is just prioritize which skill node you level up first. After the boost nodes, once the boost nodes are like past level 15 or something, then you want to like maybe start looking at the skill nodes a little bit. Cool. Yeah. So all of the things, or like most of the things we talked about before now, have you checked the progression command? Have you seen that one?
I'm not sure if I checked it or not. I don't remember the command names. I was like,
yeah, there.
Clicked on the link and then.
I try to name them for what makes sense, but I think this was called stages before because it has like the game stages, like early, mid, late, end game, and then like what kind of numbers you want in the different categories.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that one actually.
Okay. So basically everything we're doing right now is like trying to see if we can fit you into the category that you're in and set you on the right path to get to the point where you want to get. So you're trying to get to 225, right? Roughly around there. So we want to get you to like these numbers here is basically like if I get you there to that point, then I've been successful, you've been successful, and you'll be able to kill the content that is appropriate for around your level, basically. So like these things like solo CRA, party Damien, and Lotus, right? That's what I said in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. So that's all how that's connected. So that means that you're gonna hopefully be like around 13k stat, critical rate over 85%. Like we're trying to aim to get that to 100. Your damage percent and boss damage together will be at least 270 is what we're aiming for. Your functional IED will be 92. That's something that I didn't touch on yet. Have you heard me talk about the difference between like your functional IED and your visual IED?
No, I don't believe so.
So your visual ID would be how much it says in your stat window, right? Like the 66%. Functional would be how much is actually applied when you hit a monster. So what I mean by that is sometimes classes will be able to debuff bosses or empower your own skills, but only specific skills when you hit a monster. And those on hit, like at the moment that you hit the boss, there's like different calculations that go into place. So it takes your basic ID, and then it takes your bonus ID from special attacks. It takes the boss's debuff, and it takes everything into account. And then it says like, okay, I'm going to hit you for this much. So the problem there is that the debuff on the boss can be shown in your stat window, right? Because if you hit something else, then you wouldn't get that buff. So Same with things that only empower certain skills, because if you weren't using that skill, then it wouldn't apply for your stat window either. So what's important to know is what your functional IED is. And just like what I talked about with the critical rate is, you want to know what is your 100% uptime functional IED, right? So if you have one skill that gives you plus 30%, but it only has 10% uptime, then you can't really count on that. But there are certain things, like once your boost nodes go past level 40 combined, you'll typically get 20% there. Sometimes passive hyper skills will give you IED, and sometimes boss debuffs. Now, I think that the daggers for Cadena, I think, give a debuff, if I'm not mistaken, for IED. It's like 10% or something. Not 100% sure.
It reduces their defense by 30.
By 30, okay. So that would be like a 30% IED debuff on the boss that you could have at 100% uptime. So that's a really good source that you have of IED there. It's just a chunk of 30. So in order to know what your functional IED is going to be, you can use !IED, and that links to a calculator. And there you can just put in all the sources that you have, so you can know functionally what your actual number is at, right? So you can't just go off of your window again. Again, like I said, it's going to be a calculation story. So this number that right now you think is 66, maybe with the debuff, maybe with some other things that don't show up immediately, maybe you're actually already at like 70 or 80, which puts you at a way better place for doing something like 3-door CRA and maybe even CVEL. Not to say that you're already there, but it does paint a more complete picture of how much your character is actually able to ignore the armor already, how much penetration you actually already have. Yeah, so here's like some of the items already. Like if you don't have them, you can just click them and then they get removed. And then this number will be the number that you will look at on what you're aiming for here. So for that number, you're going to be aiming for like 92. And that'll be basically like 90 to 92. That'll be allowing you to, like 90 is probably good enough to solo CVEL. But if you want to do Lotus and Damien, because those don't have 200% defense, those have 300% defense. Meaning that every 1% of extra penetration you have means that you have 3% less damage reduction, right? Because their armor is like 3 times as effective. So, yeah, like 90%, you still have 30% damage reduction. 92, you only have 28. 92, you have, Jesus Christ, 90%, 300, minus 270, 30% left, so you deal 70% of your damage. If you have 92, then you ignore 276, so they have 24% left, so you deal 76% of your damage. So you go from dealing 70% of your damage to 76 with 2% more, but you deal 76 compared to 70, so your damage actually goes up compared to your previous state by almost 10%, right?
Yep.
Just for 2% more IED. So, but of course, the higher you go, the harder it is to get those extra 2%, because there's diminishing returns on your sources of IED. So the puzzle gets harder. But yeah, that's why you only start pushing past that, once you're going for late game and end game, then people are basically just pushing for 97, 98, maybe even like functional 99% IED. But yeah, you have some boss. If you're bossing anything with a paladin, I don't know if your friend is a paladin, for example, but they have a skill that just allows them to debuff a boss for 50% defense. So that's like a huge chunk. That can make the transition a lot easier for you as well, for example. But yeah, I don't know what job your friend is playing.
Dual Blade.
Dual Blade. Okay, he will. So what Dual Blade has is a lot of the skills. 2 of the skills that they have built-in 100% ignore defense, so they just deal true damage. And all their other skills have either 20 or 30% extra IED built into them, so they rely very little on IED. And they have a skill where they put down a clone, and if the clone gets hit, then they get 100% critical rate for next 5 seconds, so that they basically have that all the time. So they don't need to worry about IED or crit rate pretty much at all. So they have it super easy with their kit. You, not so much, but they probably have other challenges. Or not really, because Dual Blade is like one of the most OP classes right now. But yeah. At least you'll look way cooler, okay?
Yep.
You'll have chains and stuff, so...
Yeah.
Well, they have a chain. They have one... Yeah, only have one chain skill. You have way more.
Yep. All of them, pretty much.
Yep, pretty much. Oh, you have that one thrash skill, right? Where you're just like... where you're like twirling around. That one's pretty cool. I like that one. Okay, does that... So, as you... because we were talking about matrix. So one of the things is as your matrix grows and you get more slots, it comes into play to also specifically just with sharp eyes, right? To also get you that critical rate, so you can it becomes part of the puzzle as well, but only to a very small extent. The other thing that will be very important for your matrix is along with sharp eyes is the decent skills, and one of the early ones that you probably want to start taking into account is decent speed infusion, because it just makes your attack speed higher, and that can help you get that extra rank of attack speed. Because you don't need the attack speed +1 in your inner ability to hit your max attack speed cap, but you do need speed infusion to hit that. So that is a very important skill for you to look into adding at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you find yourself not really using, or it doesn't really benefit you that much, one of the skill nodes that you have, you could replace them with a boost node if they have a decent enough level, right? You typically wouldn't replace a skill node with like a level 1 boost node that doesn't really do very much. That'll pretty much always be a negative. But, you know, if you have a bunch of nodes and you're leveling up and you get like a level 10 boost node or something, that could definitely be worth more than a skill node that you can just use once every 2 minutes, but the boost node just permanently gives you 20% more final damage, right? And last thing I'll say, for the matrix, you know about the matrix enhancement points as well, right?
Actually, not really, no.
So with every level that you gain past 200, you'll get a matrix point. And then you can click the slot enhancement here. I don't know if I can show you on this guy, because I'm also 200. But if you click slot enhancement, then you'll get this here, and it'll show like level 000. And then you could click on one, and you could level it up to level 1. And basically what that does is, if there's a node equipped in that slot, it will give the node the buff as if it was a level higher than it actually is. So ideally in the beginning, you want to, whichever slot you level up, you want to make sure you put your boost nodes in there so you gain more final damage on your boost nodes. So every 5 levels, you basically gain 5 levels on a boost node. And you can just level them up to level 5, one at a time, just one to the next.
Okay.
So the boost node goes up to 25, the slot goes up to 5, combined 30, every skill in 2 boost nodes, 2 times 30, 60. You're leveling up high level skills, so they give you plus 2% final damage per level. 60 levels up to plus 120% final damage once they're completely maxed out. So you're looking compared to when you're done, is plus 120% final damage from your boost node, and plus 100 plus 50%? It's plus 50%, right? Final damage from hitting the plus 50% arcane power cap. So instead of doing like 100% of your damage, you're dealing 270%, or it's even more because it's like multiplicative. So it starts getting a lot more. So the damage will just, even if your gear doesn't really upgrade, if this stuff keeps going, then your damage just goes up like crazy as well. But, hopefully the gear will go up as well. Links will go up. Everything will go up. And then just all of that stuff working together is going to make you insanely strong.
Okay.
That's what we're going to be working on. So for the gear right now, we'll probably be focusing on, unless there's something that you have any questions about so far?
No questions.
Okay. For the gear, we'll probably be focusing on your weapon, your secondary, and your emblem, right? Those are the cornerstones of making you strong. And then we'll just, in general, talk about like what set bonuses you want to aim for, which ones you personally want to aim for, and which ones I think are good. And then beyond that, kind of like general end goal in mind of being like 225, soloing CRA, solo or duo, Lotus and Damien. So weapon, secondary, and emblem first. Your secondary, your transmitter type A, is going to stick with you for a long time. And like I said, the important lines here are attack, boss, so attack percentage, boss damage percentage, and ID percentage, right? Your ID we didn't do the calculation yet, but you will probably need some ID somewhere, at least like one line, because Vellum and everything beyond just has a lot of defense, and it doesn't seem like familiars are going to be helping you out there too much. So the ID, you typically want it on the emblem, because the emblem cannot get boss damage. Boss damage is only on weapon and secondary. The emblem is the one that can only get ID there in that equation. But the weapon and the secondary can also get ID, but the emblem cannot get boss damage. So typically what people aim for is ID and percentage attack on the emblem. So you have an ID line already, right? So you had like a little bit of an inclination that it can get that. Luck can be tempting, but luck is just bad. Compared to attack, luck does almost nothing on these equips. And because you're going to get a lot of luck from the other equips already, you need to squeeze out percentage attack from these 3 items to just make sure that it multiplies all of the weapon attack that you have to empower all of the luck that you have. Okay. It's just a matter of balance. Like, let's say that all the other items could get percentage attack, then maybe percentage luck would be really good, right? Because in the end, it all just gets thrown into a certain equation. But the way that the meta is now is there's just very few sources of percentage attack. In fact, almost the only ones in the entire game are your weapon, your secondary, and your emblem. So that's where you want to aim for them as much as possible. That also means that these are the 3 items that you probably get to legendary, maybe even way beyond everything else even being past epic. Just everything else might be like rare and or epic when you push these guys to legendary, just because of how impactful they are for your overall damage output. So the fact that you already made them unique, you're already moving very much in the right direction, so that's good. But yeah, so aiming for like ID attack on the emblem, and aiming for pure attack or a combination of attack and boss damage on the secondary, that would be great. And then for your weapon, if you're going to be doing CRA, so what setup are you looking for to do CRA? Like with a struggle party, just with a duo, or like trying solo, or?
I could try doing it duo, maybe if I get strong enough in a reasonable amount of time, or I could either do struggle party. I don't think I can do solo anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. You could do solo for practice, but then depending on how far away you are, you can be like, okay, I need 1 more person to help me out, or I need like 3 or 4 more people to help me out.
So yeah, I'm just looking towards more the struggle party and duo.
Okay.
So I usually struggle party.
Yep, that's cool. So what will probably get you there the fastest is to unlock Sun Commercy and get the Sweetwater chain. Have you done anything in Sun Commercy before?
Yeah, I was working on Commercy on Adele a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I guess the Adele got you the fake Fafnir stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't that necessary to make that upgrade, because it's like barely an upgrade compared to that. But compared to the Utgard chain, it's a huge upgrade. So way better base attack, and level 160, so also higher tiers in the potential. So you unlock, you do the pre-quests, and then once you can start killing bosses in your solo voyages, you'll have a chance of the weapon to drop. Pretty decent chance. The drop rate is pretty high. I mean, high compared to what it was. Doesn't mean like you'll have 50% chance, but like it's a decent chance. Once you unlock Herb Town, you'll be able to do CPQ as well. I don't know if you've ever done that.
Yeah, I've done it a couple times.
Yep. So that typically has more bosses and it's just faster, and you can do it on top of your solo voyages. So we should have a weapon like typically within like 3 to 4 days, you'll have a weapon. Sometimes even on the first day, it just kind of depends on RNG there. That weapon, so it'll depend on how quickly you progress and everything, but I don't think there's any harm in getting that weapon up to unique. Probably wouldn't get it legendary, right? That's more like if you want to solo and you want to do the whole thing yourself, then getting your weapon, your secondary, and your emblem to legendary with like at least 2 good lines is like mandatory. But getting it to either epic with 2 lines of attack, or unique with like 1 line of attack, maybe a small line of boss, something like that, will definitely be good enough. And as for Star Force, we're probably not going to get anything past like 11 or 12. That's probably like the most that you're going to get anything for now. Just like as a general thing. Also for the Sweetwater, right? Because you're going to eventually move away from the Sweetwater again, so you don't want to overinvest. but also you don't want to underinvest to make you like kind of like a dunce in the party and you're just getting carried. You want to make sure that you can also pack a punch. So you want to find the sweet spot, and it's usually like around like 10, 11, 12 stars. It's like somewhere there. See the potential. Do you know about stamps for potential?
Yeah, to get another line.
Yeah. Yeah, so sometimes they drop from bosses, but you can also buy them in Hennessy shop, the silver ones. A lot of times, though, I would just advise people. They're like, a lot of people in the beginning are looking for potential scrolls, looking for stamps. In the beginning, I would just advise people to just get another piece of the, like, just get the equip again, and then hopefully get one with 3 lines and one with potential, because a lot of times in the beginning, it's easier to just get another drop than it is to... because it's pretty expensive comparative to how much money you have in the beginning to just throw around stamps and try to find potential scrolls.
Okay.
When it comes to flames and flame scores, have you heard of these concepts, and are you kind of like aware of what kind of values you're looking for?
I just really know that it's good to have all stat flame, and flames that drop from bosses would typically have that on them? Or is that...
Yeah, that's not entirely untrue, yeah. So some items, so there's a big divide. Some items have what's called flame advantage, and some items don't have that. The flame advantage in general are just items that either, in general, items that drop from bosses or just higher level items, basically. And items that exist in KMS, because that's like where the system comes from. Items that don't exist in KMS, don't drop from bosses, or pretty low level items, or just drops from field monsters and stuff, are generally not flame advantage. If you check !flames, like one of the things in there is a link to a forum post where it shows all of the it just shows all of the items that have flame advantage. And if it's in that list, it is flame advantage. So if you find it in that list, then you know it'll get what we call good flames. That's still like a relative term, of course, because you can still get a horrible roll on an item with flame advantage, or you can get a great roll, like what you mentioned, when the item, like a Utgard item or Pencilier item, drops from a elite boss, like in one of those orbs, then it can still get high quality flames, even though it's not a flame advantaged item. So if you were to reflame it, it would get a shitty flame again. But if you keep it like that and you actually have a good outcome, there's a decent chance that it actually has a better outcome than a similar level item that actually has flame advantage with just a random flame, because there's a lot of variance in flames. So the whole thing behind what has flame advantage, what doesn't, is we're trying to see, based on the advantage and based on the reasonable outcomes, depending on their quality, where is your money best spent to make sure that you get reasonable, within reasonable chance, you make gains, basically. Where do you get the most bang for your buck? So that has to do with the variance. So items without flame advantage have less lines that will get bonus stats. So less green numbers, basically less amount of green numbers, and also a lower amount of quality within the line, so lower in quality and in quantity. So that produces way more variance, and as a result, way lower value, expected value for your money that you invest there. So in the beginning, we focus just a lot on items with flame advantage and make sure those are at a sweet spot. And then once you start min-maxing all your gear, then you try to get a little bit of flames as well, and a little bit of gains out of the non-flame advantage items, but that's like much, much later. That all makes sense?
Yep.
Cool. So in order to be able to compare, like, what kind of numbers are you going for, what numbers do you aim for, what I use is the flame score, which basically tries to just put one number on one item so that you can use that number to compare it to other items as well. So you can see very easily, like, which of these items has a good enough flame score and doesn't need to be improved anymore, or which one is actually kind of bad and still needs to be improved. The reason I do this is because, and the reason I can do this is because I know, like, roughly how much luck will you have, how much attack will you have, how much percentage stat will you have, how much percentage attack will you roughly have once you get to that point that we talked about, right, like solo CRA 225, it takes into account the progression tab, like how much will your numbers roughly be? Because based on how high your numbers are, that balance will determine how you come to this flame score, right? Because let's say that luck was everywhere, well then having a little bit of luck in your flame would barely mean anything. But if luck was a very rare source, then having luck in your flame would be highly valuable. So because we know that balance, we know how to compare flames together and make a statement on, is this flame good or is this flame bad? So that's why we have the flame score here. And how to calculate it and everything. If you check !flames, there's a link to a calculator that someone from the community made. So in the beginning, if you're still struggling, you could just put in the numbers for your item, and it'll tell you what your flame score is. And it'll also allow you to save flame scores from items so that you can put them next to each other so you compare them very easily. Can you see it on stream?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my logo is a little bit in the way, but yeah, so you can just enter your stats here. You just say like, are you in the late game or the end game? So you're going to be in a late game situation. You're going to be Shadower DB Cadena, right? And that has to deal with the calculations because the Kadena has 2 secondary stats in both strength and dex. And that's probably why people told you that percentage all stat is so good, because that scales very well with you, because it also gives you percentage dex and percentage strength. And because you have those 2 secondaries, it has more value for you. Yeah, so now you know why people probably told you that. In general, percentage all set is really good for most people, but for you it's even better than for other people. And then, once you put in the numbers here for your individual items, you'll be able to find the flame scores. After a while, you'll just be able to do it by heart, because you can tell, like, oh, if you put 1 in strength, that gives you, 1 to 8. 1 in dex also gives you 1 to 8. So 2 gives you a quarter. Luck just gives you 1, right? Because the flame score is basically how much luck equivalent is everything that's in the flame, is what it tries to say. So your main stat is always counts for 1. Your secondary counts for a little bit less. Attack counts for, I think, 4 here, and then goes down as you get more attack, more sources, less individual value. And all stat is very high here. Starts at 9 and goes eventually, once you go to endgame, goes up to 10 because of your secondary stats and because of the value. So all stats is a very, very important thing for you to see on flames, but you can also get very high chunks of luck with low percentage all stat, which could be very good as well. Or if you get a lot of luck and maybe a little bit of attack, that could be a good temporary flame. So the total flame score that you'll be aiming for is basically just what we see here in the late game, and that's balanced. That's based on what is your balance going to be of your total stats. So for the items that are not flame advantaged, something like 20 to 25. So that would be like if you have 3% all stat or 2% all stat with a little bit of luck, or like 20 luck and maybe some secondary stat, like something like that will already be good enough. On your items with flame advantage, you're going to be aimed for 75. So that's on your things like CRA, Pink Holy Cup, those kind of things. So we're not going to get to that point yet because we have to get the hurdle of CRA gear first, right? Mm-hmm. But on the items up to there, you can kind of look at these numbers and kind of like aim down the middle to see how strong would the items that I'm going to be using to kill CRA need to be in order to take the boss down, and how much stat will you roughly need, which is, of course, like these numbers are just taken from here, right? Because you're between 20 and 221, there's not really going to be much shifting around. So we'll talk about which equips you can get that have flame advantage, that can give you that easy boost for extra stat, that will allow you to be put into the position to kill CRA more easily. So part of that is going to be the Sweetwater weapon and the emblem and the secondary we already talked about. The other thing we're going to be focusing on is the combination of the boss accessory set, because those are the accessories where a lot of them actually have flame advantage. And it'll be very easy to get like 40 or so, 40, 50 easily flame score on those items. And if let's see, because it's the eye, face, earring, probably belt, 1 pendant, and then you have like shoulder. Oh, and pocket. Yeah, so if you have like 50 flame score on all of those 6 items, that's 300 luck that you're just going to get that other set bonuses won't be able to provide. So that's like the go-to right now. So that's like what the Astitas earrings is part of. That's what your Zakum Iron Face is part of, etc., etc. So let's see. So ring-wise, you want to use the Silver Blossom ring, yeah, because that's part of that set. So one thing is, how are you with occult cubes? Do you have like a set of those?
I only have around like 50 right now.
Yeah, not like a huge pile. You have something to work with, but not like a huge pile. Yeah. Yeah. So if you're limited in that, you might want to wait until things go to epic, and then roll them for 6% stat. Unless you have like more than 100 or something, then you could be like one item and just try to get it to 3% luck, right? Because it's kind of a numbers game. It's kind of like a quantity over quality thing here, because just having a lot of equips, well, if everything gets 3% luck and it's 10 items, then boom, you have 30% luck, right? And that's way cheaper than getting one item to legendary and getting 3-line luck on it. So you're just going to slowly work everything up. But again, the main focus is on the weapon, the secondary, and the emblem. And then just occult cubing your items one at a time, just the 3% luck. If you get something to epic, rolling for that 6%. And that's basically where a lot of the other items are going to stay at. So the kind of treasure ring is going to be your second ring, yes. And then synergy ring is very good. You already have the max bonus, so that's very good. And then right now you're using the platinum cross ring. Are you working on the master SS ring?
I'm not quite sure what that is.
Is okay. So currently in the event store we have the synergy ring, and then we have those jewel boxes. I don't know if you saw those.
Oh yeah.
They're like ring settings and jewel boxes. So what you're gonna have to do is buy those jewel boxes, open them up, and they'll give you gems. I don't know if I have any left here. No, I think I used them all up. And then you talk to the moon bunny that's standing next to the NPC, and you can fuse the gems together to get a higher tier gem. And you do that until you get an S tier gem. And then once you have the S tier, you fuse together with one of those empty rings that you can buy in the shop, and it'll make an S tier ring. Then you have to make 4 of those S tier rings. Talk to the moon bunny, and it will fuse them together into a master ring SS. And that ring will have the same stats as a fully stacked synergy ring. And then together with the other 3 rings you have, those will be your 4 core rings. Very strong ring, and you can buy up to 30 boxes a day with 300 coins. Might want to do that today still before the reset if you haven't done it yet. If you have the coins. And it's actually really... this is like the fastest that anyone's ever been able to make Master SS rings. It's really, really fast, because usually you can only buy 10 of those boxes a day. So people are getting like 3 times the normal speed. Some people even get like a full ring on one day. That's pretty lucky though. But I just did 21 boxes on my character right before the stream, and I was able to get 2 S rings. So that's already half a ring. But yeah, it's only if you get lucky. So that's your 4th ring that you want to get. And then the Horntail necklace is you're using Chaos and regular Horntail. Okay, so you'll see in the flame stats, right, that these both don't have flame advantage. Like these numbers are very, very low, right? Like the Horntail pendant has like a little bit of defense, 1 speed, 3 jump. Like it's a little bit garbo. Regular Horntail necklace has decent numbers for whatever quality it is. But there is a option for a Mechanator pendant, which drops from Arcarium. I don't know if you've ever done Arc.
Yep.
Okay, so Silent Crusade questline, unlock Arc, and then try to get a Mechanator, and then just replace whichever one is the weakest from the 2 pendants, which will probably be the Horntail necklace, right? Since the worst base stats, no attack on it. Yeah. Weapon we talked about. So belt-wise, you can... there are options. I need to visualize this for a second. Because we have the rings, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we'll have 1. Let's say we skip this one. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then use 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we could just do that. That's fine. So you could stick to this belt. Honestly, I think that's okay. You haven't invested into it yet. Well, you have 11 stars, but you haven't invested into potential at all yet. So there is still the option to switch to either the Pink Bean belt or the Chaos Sakun belt. Chaos Sakun will be a little bit tricky, like you'll have to get a carry or wait like a lot further, and then it won't come into play for the set bonus. But going for the Pink Bean Belt could be doable because you still have to kill Pink Bean for the Pink Holy Cup anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason you would want the Pink Bean Belt is because it has the flame advantage. So you'll be able to easily rely on getting 40 to 50 flame score from that over this belt, which doesn't have flame advantage. So we'll just... you have no business flaming this one right now. It's just throwing away money, basically. And since you haven't overly invested into this yet, could be a good idea. But it will depend on your shoulder, right? Because we're looking at the combination of the set bonuses. See if you invested in that one already. Okay, so just 11 stars, also not upgraded yet. Okay, so what we could do is go for the 9 set bonus and replace the belt with a Pink Bean Belt and replace the shoulder with the Royal Black Metal Shoulder from Magnus. And that'll give you the 9 set bonus for the boss accessory set. Once we get the power crystal, right, and the Pink Holy Cup, and then the belt shoulder, that should round out the 7 set, and then replace the Horntail necklace with the Mechanator pendant. Okay. I'm just trying to visualize here. So then we finish this row and this row, right? We finished the 2 left rows. And we finished all the accessories. Oh yeah, for badge, you also want to do Magnus, right? Because you want to get the Crystal Ventus badge. Mm-hmm. You probably already got for Adele as well, or at least trying to get.
Yeah, I got that for Adele.
Yeah. And then we talked about these. So all we're really looking at now is, let's see, basically your armors, right? So for armors, there's a few options that are similar. So if you were to get one of those armors that we talked about that drop from a boss that are pencilier but have like really good flame scores on them, again, you can use the progression tab and you can use the flame score calculator to check if this is a good enough flame score to keep. Then that could be an item that you keep, because the set bonuses don't really start coming into play for armors yet around this level. The other armors that are good that have flame advantage are the Necro gear from Hilla and the Von Leon gear from Von Leon, obviously. Hilla is very easy to access, no pre-quest, you just walk in. Normal Hilla, very easy to kill. If you can get a hard Hilla carry or like a group hard Hilla clear, then you can get an extra attempt per week. And that's also gear, the flame advantage gear, that you might want to fuse after, like if you get it, but it has shit flames on it, because there's still variants. If you get 2 pieces that both have shitty flames, you can still fuse them and maybe get a good result out of it. And Von Leon could be something that you like farm yourself once you get the stronger gear. So that would take care of everything, because you could get the hats there. Von Leon does have a cape, but Necro does not have a cape. But it does have shoe, hat, glove, overall, all of that stuff. The other option for cape you could have is the Nova cape. That drops from normal Magnus or hard Magnus, but like normal Magnus might be doable. And that's probably going to be the set. And then if you make it with that, then you replace obviously the hat, the top and the bottom, with the CRA stuff, right? Once you kill Chaos Root Abyss, and then you replace the weapon once you get enough Vellum clears, because you need 15 pieces for that instead of just 5 from the others. You know how it works, right? With the pieces that drop.
No, actually.
Okay, so the CRA bosses don't just drop the equips, they drop emblems. And then once you have 5 emblems from the specific boss, then you can turn it in for, like for Queen, for example, you need 5 of her emblems to drop, and then you can turn it in for the hat. And if you have 5 pieces from the Clown, you can get the pants, and 5 pieces from Chicken, you can get the top, and then 15 pieces from Vellum, you can get the weapon. So Vellum you definitely need to clear a few times, and you have weekly reset, so it'll take a little bit longer to get enough pieces to get your weapon replaced. But once you do that, you'll get the 4 set bonus, which has 30% boss damage in it, and you'll have the Fafnir weapon, which will get the flame advantage, which the Sweetwater doesn't. So the base stats are a little bit lower, but once you get a decent flame on there, it'll definitely overpower the Sweetwater, and then you can just retire the Sweetwater weapon, basically. So a few things you can do to prepare for once you get CRA is, if there's ever a lead boss or there's a Rune of Riches, try to always jump for the armor, the weapon you can do for the weapon, but specifically try to jump for the armor things, because there's a very high chance that they're epic. And you know, like about transfer hammer, like to which extent do you know about that system?
I know that it can transfer potential over and transfers all stars except for one of them.
Yes. Okay. There's a few other limitations, but that's the main thing. Yeah. So if you jump into those orbs, you get some penciler gear. It has a very high chance of getting epic. Then you Star Force it afterwards. Then you can transfer hammer that into the CRA gear. So the overall transfers into the top and also into the bottom. So if you get 2 overalls and then 1 hat to transfer into the CRA hat, and possibly 1 weapon, right, to transfer into the Fafnir weapon, then you can immediately have some Star Force on the CRA gear, and you basically have what just essentially is a 100% epic potential scroll just waiting in your inventory. And then that'll save you a lot of upgrade costs later once you start taking the CRA into use. Does that all make sense?
Yep.
I do have a more in-depth Star Force and transposing video as well under !! Transfer Hammer, I think. Not Star Force, transfer hammering and transposing. Transposing is something that's kind of like similar to transfer hammer, but it comes into play much later in the game, and they'll just go more in depth and just explain a little bit more what I'm talking about, and also a little bit about the limitations. But yeah, if you watch that, like if you understand what I explained now, they'll just make way more sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So in general, yeah, things up to like 10 to 12 stars, like that's all fine. Potential wise, if it's epic, try to get it to 6% luck with occult cubes. If it's rare, try to get it to 3% stats with occult cubes. If it doesn't have flame advantage, don't mess with the flame. If it does have flame advantage, try to aim for the numbers that we talked about, like around 50 flame score, for example. If you're not sure about what the flame score is, you can use a calculator. If you don't have 50, you could fuse them together once you level up your alchemy. For your weapon, you just use whatever you get. And for the rest of the accessories, pre-quests, unlock them, and bunch everything together. Aside from that, it's make sure you do your symbol dailies. Make sure you get as many nodes as you can, especially for you right now. So work on the Master SS ring, and definitely look at events and event shops. Those are going to be super valuable for your progression early on.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know about like because circulators are pretty expensive in this stage of the game for you. So you could just leave your invulnerability like it is right now. Yeah, that's probably something that's going to come into play a little bit later, like once you're already past once you're at the point of like killing CRA or stuff, or you just have enough money lying around to get it to legendary, because it is, I think it's 19 mil per roll, which is quite expensive. It's basically a black cube every time.
Okay.
All right. So does that make clear like kind of like what dailies are important, which ones you want to unlock, what gear set you want to go to, what's important to progress for your Legion that you asked about?
The Sweetwater chain. NMAG/HMAG cape. The symbols, event rings.
Hilla daily.
Hilla and Von Leon.
Yep. Yeah, which accessories are you going for?
That was
Arc, right? Arc, unlocking that one.
And the holy pink cup.
Yep.
Royal shoulder.
Yep. Pink beam belt.
Yep, pink beam belt.
Yeah, and then like so, and cube wise, just to reiterate, like the weapon probably up to unique, like 1 line of attack on unique. That's like the most important thing there. And then for your emblem, IED plus attack, and then secondary attack plus boss damage. Like those are the lines you want. You usually want to keep rolling until you have 2 useful lines. You could, like, depending on your funds, you could try to get them to legendary and try to get useful lines there, or you get master crossman cubes and you try to get 2 useful lines on unique, because right now you don't have any percentage attack on either one, and just rolling a line of attack on both of those will already increase your damage by quite a bit. But that depends on like how much money you have available to you right now. You know where you can buy the master craftsman cubes?
The Meister?
So the Meister are the purple ones, and then the master craftsmen are like gold and black kind of.
The Henseys market, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can buy those there. But yeah, I wouldn't go overboard, right? Because they're cheaper than the red cubes and the black cubes, but they're still quite expensive. So you don't want to go too crazy on those.
All right.
Yeah, you know which skills to go for in your matrix. You know about the order in the matrix. You're going to be working on your legion and your links a little bit every day. Just a little bit every day goes very far. Once you get to 3k, rearrange your things. Yeah, and I think I pointed you in the direction of a lot of the commands as well. If you haven't checked them before, you can get a lot of extra info there, and I think all of that together will definitely get you to that point. The only thing that's up to you is just practicing the bosses and just getting used to your character, getting used to the mobility, the animation canceling, and just feeling in control of your character and knowing what the mechanics of the boss are and what's expected of you in your role, basically.
All right.
But I leave that in your hands.
Yep, that's for me to train.
Yep. Yeah, if there's anything else that comes up, well, anything right now or anything that comes up later, you can always send me a message in Discord or ask me in chat, and I'll do my best to help you out.
All right.
I hope this was useful.
Yes, it was.
Okay, and then I wish you the best of luck.
All right.
All right.
Have a good day.
Thank you. See you around.
Bye.